Hey beautiful people, my name is Kristen. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. If you are interested in any of these books, please leave me a comment below if you've read them before or if you want to read them now. Like and subscribe, come along the journey. I really appreciate everybody being part of this community and part of books. And the last couple weeks in August, I read 6 books. So this is my review of those. I will leave a link to the first part of the month's reviews, but I'm not going to cover them a second time. So I will go ahead and, as always, hold up each book. You can scroll along to the ones you're interested in, but these are all spoiler-free reviews, but my spoiler disclaimer is that I'm going to do these today, just in this video, from most disappointing to my favorite of the 6 books. So stay tuned, or don't forget to scroll to the end to see what that is. So the most disappointing book that I read was actually one that I picked as one of the greatest covers in my last video, and that was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. So I really had been looking forward to reading this book. It is the story of a couple of young students that meet gaming in a hospital, trying to get over some life illnesses. One's the sister, one's himself, and just following along in their lives. And I love the nostalgia of it. I love the video game focus of it. I loved how they kind of patterned their entire lives around video games. That is something that I'm interested in and participate in. And I love the 80s. I love this cover. And actually, I was probably about at the halfway point when I did my last video. And if you had asked me at that moment what I thought, I would have predicted even halfway through that it was going to be a 5-star read. But then it just really went into things happening. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but a major occurrence happens in the book where I was just disappointed that choice had been made. I felt like up to that point, things had not happened necessarily fairy tale-ish or the best, but they were very real and very, believable and genuine, and witty humor and dialogue, and just grappling with life questions and difficulties of life. And then things just started happening that I was like, oh, this is not going to be, this is not going to end in a way that is satisfying to me personally. And once that major twist happened, about 2/3 of the way book, I was just kind of finishing the story, getting through it. I appreciate the book. I still, would give it 3 stars. It went from the 5-star to the 3-star just because of a personal kind of preference point. It's like, and some people will probably disagree with me. I think there was a lot of people that loved this book solidly all the way through. So I don't want to dissuade anybody from considering it or looking into it. But just for me personally, it just ended up being really disappointing in the way it ended. Liane Moriarty's Apples Never Fall. I've been having this on my TBR since pretty much it came out. I pretty much bought it like 20% off new because I was so excited about reading it. And I had misremembered and misspoken, I think, in a previous video, saying that there were older parents who had passed away and there was 4 siblings kind of hashing out what had happened or the estate, but that's not true. The father is still alive, the mother disappears, and the 4 siblings are left trying to figure out how the father's involved and how, the relationships are going to go down and what's going to happen with family properties, estates, all this kind of stuff in light of the drama, the family drama that's going on. I really, really enjoyed it. I think it's probably 3.5, maybe 4 stars for me. I really loved going back to her writing style, where she's like giving very clear definitions in the timeline kind of thing, and it kind of goes in like a backward to forward kind of time frame. So like you're flashing from scene to scene, and it's piecing it together and weaving it together into a family history. So if you like kind of maybe a slower move family drama, I think this one is actually a pretty good one. I really I really enjoyed it, although it was not my favorite of the month, because I still have several others that I enjoyed even more. So I read Brandon Sanderson's Skyward. This is a young adult series about teenagers who are being raised up to become fighter pilots to protect the human colony on a foreign planet. And so, long time before any of them remembered, they had made a colony and were trying to survive against the Kel, who are the enemies trying to shoot them down, and they're trying to establish their colony and figure out how to, survive on this foreign planet for the human race, kind of thing. And so we're following Sansa, who's a young teenage girl. Really, really just had a good time reading this very easy to read, very still descriptive world building, very still Brandon Sanderson in really loving the characters, just getting attached to them, even characters that are supposed to be like the evil people or the people who are in authority thwarting the teenagers coming together and making things happen. You still like totally are on board with them and appreciate what they're trying to go through. So just really, really fun. I could see it all as a movie in my mind. Going to continue that series as soon as I find them, pick them up. I also read Brandon Sanderson's EdgeDancer, like this one even more. This is a sub-story out of his Stormlight series about a specific character, Lift, who you actually read the prologue that is a section out of Stormlight, and then you go back and get some of her backstory and kind of develop more of her character and flesh out some of that stuff, kind of like the Star Wars saga kind of goes back and fills in the whole Boba Fett character or something like that nature. So I totally loved the character of Lift, loved having some more of her background and story, and this was just a shorter novel, really, really fun. I don't know that you would enjoy it so much if you read it standalone without reading, but you could. It would make sense. It could be a good way to read that even first to see if you wanted to invest in the whole Stormlight series, because it is very much that writing style and that world. Then number 2, if you're going from 6 to number 1, is The Map of Salt and Stars by Zeyn. I'm not sure how to say the last name. Joukhadar? I'm not sure if the J is pronounced. But they wrote this book about a Syrian girl who is kind of born into the more upper class echelon, but then the war comes and the family has to flee. And the really cool thing is it has a dual storyline, that the second storyline is a myth. It's the magical kind of myth that is part of the Syrian culture that tells the story of a young girl who basically disguised herself as a young boy and did an apprenticeship to travel across the globe becoming a map maker. And so there is the mom in the real world who is also part of the map making world and has an actual map that she has been making that she keeps with her even though they are on the run, kind of thing. And so maps play a huge part in this, which is always a thing for me. And I loved how they would actually, each chapter would go to a different region where the magical story was being told, where there are magical creatures and magical stones and basically surreal. And then you flip over to the reality and get the grittiness of even being a refugee and being on the run and being in danger in the same location. But one is the story of kind of the meaning or the myth behind it, and then over here is like the reality of this day. And the writing is just beautiful. It's very lyrical, very poetic. I am absolutely going to read more by this author. They just have beautiful prose, and just really recommend that you look more into this book. If any of that sounds at all up your alley or whatnot, check into this book and maybe give it a try. And then my number one book that I read, I should have read it. People have been recommending it to me for like 2 years, and I finally read Kindred by Octavia Butler. So this book, I think probably a lot of people have heard, but in case you haven't, it is the story of a Black woman in the 70s who is married to a white man, and she gets drawn literally into the past a couple hundred years to try to save the life of a young white boy who is drowning in the river. And she keeps on getting sucked into the past to have to deal with him, his issues, but it's back in the Southern slave day kind of trade where she's in danger. Like, she's there to save him, but she's now in danger and in this society. And so it's this back and forth that she's trying to figure out what the heck is happening to her. Why is all this happening? What is her purpose? How can she do this? There's family ties that are connected into it. Obviously, there is a lot of racial thoughts, injustices, wrestling with attitudes, with even language, and how do we address one another, and just the descriptiveness of what it was like being on the plantation and how she kind of wrestled with that throughout history and knowing history and how things had played out, and us thinking about it, you know, from this perspective. It was just a powerful, powerful writing. Just really, really loved it all the way through. Thought it, for the others that I struggled with the endings, this was a really powerful, solid ending that I just really loved the way this was told. Made me think, made me, kind of chuckle in places and just kind of be emotional, not necessarily cry and bawl with sorrow, but just be so heart hit. So those are the books that I read in August. Again, feel free to comment, leave me any messages about if you've read them or if any of these are on your to be read pile. I look forward to continuing to chat and share more books in the future. Like and subscribe, come along. Have a great day, y'all.